Thank you. Well, it's an honor to rise today in support of my colleague and his private member's bill C-225. He has done an extraordinary amount of work on this bill, demonstrating his sincere and unwavering commitment to standing up for those impacted by intimate partner violence and its devastating effects. As I looked into this issue more, there was a word that kept on coming up again and again and again, and that was epidemic. Universities, experts, provinces, organizations, and most importantly, victims themselves referred to intimate partner violence as an epidemic. When we use this word, we are not speaking in metaphors, but rather we're talking about a real crisis that is widely, rapidly, and predictably spreading across our country. And it is overwhelming our justice system. It is rapidly and predictably one of the things that overwhelms it to the greatest extent. It also puts strains on communities, and it leaves devastation in its wake. Lives are being ruined. It is a pattern of harm so pervasive that it cannot be dismissed as an isolated incident. By every measure, intimate partner violence meets that definition in Canada today: epidemic. It seems like for the last number of years, anytime I've picked up my phone and looked at the news, there's been one tragedy after another unfolding. Another woman harmed or even killed at the hands of her partner. It's become far too common of a story in this nation. Recently, we were shocked by the story of Savannah Kulla. Savannah was a young mother from Ontario whose life was taken by her ex-partner, Anthony DeShepper. What made her death even more devastating was how many warning signs there were and the fact that those were documented leading up to her death. Sadly, they were ignored, which is why we're talking about this here today. Anthony had a long story of violence, or a long history of violence and threats towards Savannah. In fact, in 2023, he faced firearms-related charges for an attack on her. And a court document even stated that he did, in fact, discharge a firearm while being reckless to the life of Savannah Kulla Davies. He evaded police for a month before finally being arrested by Waterloo Police. Yet despite his history, which was well documented, he was released on bail. And once released, he continued his pattern of extreme violence until it became fatal and ultimately resulted in the death of Savannah. Savannah knew the risks that she was facing, and she tried to draw attention to those. She told her mother, quote, "If I stay with him, he's going to end up killing me." And she pleaded for protection. She did everything she could, arguably everything right. But the system that was meant to safeguard her, the system that was meant to protect her, the system that was meant to be on her side as the victim, did not listen, did not act, and ultimately resulted in Savannah's death. But this is not isolated. Again, it is far too often that these cases occur in our country. Madison Cobb, a 23-year-old from Calgary, Alberta, was murdered in July by her ex-boyfriend. He had been stalking and harassing her for months. Madison repeatedly sought help, going to authorities, even signing an affidavit. She put a restraining order that was meant to protect her until 2026. Her ex-partner was already bound by conditions requiring him to stay away from her home and her workplace, to have no contact with her. But those things didn't matter. He had even been charged twice with stalking and harassment. That didn't matter either. Madison put her fear into writing in that handwritten affidavit to the court. She said, quote, "I live in fear every day from him. I want him out of my life," end quote. She describes shaking and having panic attacks when she went out or when her phone rang in fear that it might be him. Despite all of this, the documented history, the active restraining order, the repeated charges, and her clear warnings to those in a system that were meant to protect her, Madison was killed by her ex-boyfriend in a parking garage near her workplace. Bailey McCourt, the woman for whom this bill is named. Bailey was a 32-year-old woman in British Columbia, Canada, and a proud mother of 2 girls. Like Savannah and Madison, Bailey lived in fear of her ex-husband. She felt frustrated, scared, and unsupported, according to her uncle. And she had lost faith in the courts and the system that was supposed to protect her. This past July, Bailey's ex-husband was convicted of choking and uttering threats to another victim. And after a hearing for those charges, he was let out on $500 bail, despite his history of repeat violence. 3 hours later, 3 hours after being let out on $500 bail, he went and hunted down Bailey McCourt, took a hammer to her head, and ultimately killed her, leaving her dead and leaving her 2 daughters without a loving mother. This brutal attack shook a community and robbed a family of a dearly loved woman. By naming this legislation Bailey's Law, we honor the memory of a mother, a daughter, a sister, a niece, a friend. And we make a clear statement that the lives of women matter and that our justice system desperately needs correction. That's right. And it is incumbent on us as legislators in this place to be the bridge between the change that is needed and actually creating that change. And through my colleague's private member's bill, we have that opportunity here today. Though these women originate from different places in the country and from different backgrounds and ways of life, sadly, one thing brings them together, and that is the fact that they were all victims of intimate partner violence. They are proof that intimate partner violence is not a series of isolated tragedies, but rather a deadly epidemic spreading across the country. Their stories echo those of countless other women in every corner of this nation, women who are counting on us to make a difference in this place for them. As legislators, I believe it is incumbent upon us to honor their memory, their lived reality, their story, and of course, their living family members by moving forward with this piece of legislation. We must confront and cure the epidemic that is intimate partner violence. Bailey's Law takes real, concrete steps to save lives. If passed, this bill will do a few things. One, it will treat the murder of a current or former intimate partner as first-degree murder, regardless of whether it was planned or deliberate. Second, it will create specific offenses, including assault, intimate partner, and criminal harassment of intimate partner. 3, it will require that anyone convicted of an intimate partner violence offense within the preceding 5 years can only be released by a judge, therefore creating greater accountability. It will also empower courts to detain persons accused of intimate partner violence at any time for a risk assessment reviewed by a judge, which is so crucial in terms of protecting the victim from potential harm leading to death. And lastly, this bill will modernize the detention of seized evidence, which is also much needed. Folks, this is not just legislation. It's a moral imperative on this place. Given what we know, given the stories that have come to light, it is incumbent upon us to take action. We can honor the memories of those individuals whose lives have been taken by passing this bill. It's not simply legal reform. It's a commitment to protect lives, to prevent violence, and restore justice. It's to make it work for victims rather than putting the perpetrator first, which is so important. And we know that this is not a partisan issue, but rather an issue that should concern all Canadians and therefore all members of this House. And so it is my hope that my colleagues from all parties will come together and support this bill and stand with victims.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.